Now, I know that you either have too many resources right now or you are struggling to find resources for your language studies because you're watching this video right now. This is the video for the language learner who either has way too many apps downloaded and way too many textbooks, or is like, where do I even find these things? How? Tell me, Bronte, please. Don't worry, I've got you. So in this video, we're going to be diving into how to find resources for your language studies and how to keep them all organized. Because again, if you're like me and you have way too many, you got to stay organized in order to actually use them and see progress in the languages that you're learning. Now, if you don't know me, if you've never met me before, my name is Bronte. I'm a language coach, which means that I help language learners go from feeling frustrated about their progress, confused about what actions to take and what decisions to make, and overwhelmed with the amount of resources to choose, strategies to use, decisions to make about what to do and what not to do, feeling all of those things, to fluently and confidently using the languages that you're learning in your day to day life. That's the goal. In this video, we're going to be talking all about resources, how to find them, how do I find them? Because I find a lot of them, if I'm going to be honest. And then how to not get overwhelmed when you have lots of options. So, the very first step when it comes to finding resources for your language studies is identifying what kind of resource do you need. It's the clarity step. If you know anything about me, if you've ever watched any of my videos, read my blog posts, anything, you know that clarity is the very first step to anything that we do in our language studies. You have to get clarity before you can make decisions, before you can take more action. And so, what exactly do you need this resource to be able to do? What skills are you trying to build? What specifically about that skill do you find challenging? Now, if you've watched my clarity video or my guiding principle video, then you know what I'm talking about when I ask that question. Because speaking, for example, is not just speaking, it is recall, it is recognition, it is vocabulary, it is grammar, it is pronunciation. So many areas of our language studies that all impact your ability to speak with someone else and understand when being spoken to. So identify what is it that you're trying to achieve? What is the thing that you're trying to tackle right now? And then you can decide on the resource because there's so many resources out there nowadays that unless you're learning something like an indigenous language that isn't spoken in many places or a language that isn't spoken by many people, chances are you're going to be able to find a lot of resources for you to learn this language. And it's a matter of narrowing down which one and sticking to it. Next, and this is kind of an optional step, decide if you want free resources or paid resources. Most of the time, we don't really know if we want free or paid until we actually see the resource. And then we're like, oh, I need this. I don't care. Take my money. And then sometimes we're like, oh, there's a free version that does a really good job of what I need for right now. I'm going to stick with that. And there's some pros and cons to each one, but there are lots of resources that you can use. Mango Languages is one of them that I definitely would recommend. Duolingo is free, and there's a reason why so many people use it, despite what some people like to say about it. I think it's a great place to start. And then there are so many websites and so many YouTube channels that's focused specifically on a language, like teaching Spanish, teaching French, teaching Norwegian. I made a lot of videos on where to find things for comprehensible input. That's a whole other conversation. And so when I'm looking for resources, I literally go to Google and I type in resources for learning French. And I might even dive into it deeper and say, specifically, what about that speaking or what about writing? Resources for learning more vocabulary in French. But sometimes I like to dive even deeper into the thing that I'm struggling with. So if I'm struggling with vocabulary, what vocabulary? Oh, educational vocabulary. Okay. Are there videos that I can watch that are talking about education, like dramas or movies? Are there books that I can read? Are there some writing practice activities that I can assign to myself to get this work done? Do I just want to follow a textbook to get me to intermediate? Because most textbooks are going to get you there. What is it that you're looking for? And I'm actually going to include a video that I made on my process for finding specifically comprehensible input resources. But the strategy that I share there is the same thing that you can do right now for finding resources outside of comprehensible input. Then you want to make sure you know how this resource is going to help you. What is this resource helping you to do? Again, it's tied to the first one a little bit, but now that you have the resource in hand, let's say it's LingoDeer, the app. I love LingoDeer. You're saying, what specific skills does this help me to focus on? What do I expect to achieve after completing this resource? And that is also a really good question to ask yourself, because if you know what outcome you expect to see after using this resource, if you don't see it, that probably means you didn't do the work. And that's why we take the time to figure this out first. And then you want to get organized, especially because you've done this dive into finding more resources. Some of them you might have found and ultimately decided you're not going to use. So it's very important that you save them for later somewhere because you never know if you might need them. But also, you don't want to have 11 tabs open and have all the apps on your phone ready to go and causing potential binge studying, burnout, distraction, procrastination, routine wandering, all the things that could be happening in your language studies. And most importantly, you want to prevent the overwhelm, the potential overwhelm that'll happen when you have so many resource options. And so I personally like to organize all of my resources on Notion. And so this is kind of what my Notion looks like when I'm organizing resources. I have a section for which language this is focused on, what skills this is building. I have a section for description so I can explain what this resource is all about. Have I used it? Have I finished it? I organize everything. I add in links to the resource, links to resources that I haven't purchased yet, but I found and I think are interesting. And then once you have these resources and you have the beginnings of a plan, because you already have that done from step 3, now it's time to create your schedule and your routine. And I have videos, I'm going to link them below, all on creating your schedule and creating your routine for your language studies. Because once you have these pieces in place, you can take your plan, your schedule, your routine, and start making consistent progress. Because once you can get consistent and start seeing progress over time, you will be that much closer to using the languages that you're learning. So, in the comments below, let me know what other questions you have about finding resources, staying organized with your resources, because that could be the topic for another video that I create just for you. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content just like this, and let me know what other questions you have about anything language learning related. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.